guide our young so that they don't end up falling apart?
Mental health is not just about symptoms, it's about relationships, it's about overall well-being. This is so useful for everyone, whether or not they have a mental illness.
Gen Z men are overdosing on screens, sex, silence.
Gen Z men still struggle with this. It goes against our image of that we have to have it all together. Even though that looks different for Gen Z, it's so prevalent.
But inside, they're starving for truth, for connection, for presence.
It's not like what I'm actually feeling, an unwillingness to admit vulnerability.
In this episode, Micah Blackwell breaks down the epidemic of spiritual numbness. And how reclaiming vulnerability and divine masculinity is the antidote.
When you change your narrative and you meet people like there are mirrors to your true self, you don't have to wear that mask.
Have you ever wondered what masculinity even is in the modern era? Are you ready to move beyond the macho bully or the soy boy archetypes? I'm Mark Azulay, and this is the Men's Therapy Podcast. Together, we'll explore how neuroscience, Jungian psychology, and Buddhist philosophy can transform your life, your marriage, and your business. Are you ready to deep dive into the minds of men? Let's begin. Welcome back to the Men's Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Azulay, and I'm here with Micah Blackwell. He is the host of The Men's Couch, another phenomenal podcast about men's mental health, and is currently a student at Robert Morris University. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on. Yeah.
So I'm really excited to talk to you because we were chatting a little bit in the pre-show. I don't talk to many people of Gen Z in my professional context. I work with a handful as clients,
Which is it's a bit surprising to me because I feel like my generation, Gen Z, is more open about mental health on platforms, on internet platforms, but that's interesting. I guess there's not, I don't know if they're, I don't know what to say about that, but I think it's a good thing that that's one of the reasons why I started the podcast. I wanted to raise awareness to it and to get the message out there.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I do think, I think like, I think the millennials, like we pushed it forward and then you all took it to like the next level. Like you went the next, well, we went. I mean, we were like the sensitive generation at the time, but the stuff I see coming out of you guys, I'm like blown away by the amount of like emotional intelligence and sensitivity. And even like the word vibes, like the fact that you guys are just talking about emotions and like, that's just part of the parlance is wild. I mean, we didn't have that when I was growing up.
Yeah. And I guess like this social media allows us and to have the platform to do those things, which can be good. So that's why I made the podcast out of my own journey and out of realizing that I benefit so much from talking about my own journey and like the practice of vulnerability. I wanted that to be like the main value of the show.
Yeah, so let's start there. Like, tell us a little bit about your journey. What got you into wanting to focus on men's mental health and start the show?
So my journey started with my own struggle. So it was like in the middle of high school, like 15, 16. And I realized that I was like struggling with depression and OCD and anxiety. And I needed to get therapy, which I did that was August of 2021. And I realized that, you know what, like I benefit so much from this, from just focusing on my mental health, because mental health is not just about like symptoms, it's about relationships, it's about just your overall well-being. And I realized that this is so useful for everyone, whether or not they have a mental illness or whatever. It's just so useful for everyone. And I was inspired to just share my story because not a lot of people do. And I feel like it is very difficult for men especially to be vulnerable and to be honest about how we are and to be honest about our own struggles, because part of that might be, and I feel like Gen Z men still struggle with this, is the sense of it goes against our image of that that we have to have it all together, even though that looks different for Gen Z. It's still prevalent, like having that the image. I don't know if it's like necessarily a tough guy image, but it's still an image.
Yeah. How do you describe that image? Like, what is kind of like the Gen Z masculine norm?
I feel like because I don't want to say like it's like in the traditional masculine sense, but I think it's more of maybe like a disconnect from your emotions, if that makes sense. Maybe like you're able to like I feel like it's like just a disconnect where someone could ask me how I'm doing and I'm not really like I'll say good, but it's not like what I'm actually feeling. And I feel like it's more of that than like the outward masculine thing. Like maybe that still exists, but at least like what I've witnessed is more of an unwillingness to admit vulnerability, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm hearing it's not so much like the tough guy, like Clint Eastwood thing. I mean, it's still this idea of like having it all figured out. I think a lot of men were expected to like have the answer. We're expected just to kind of know what's going on all the time and not be messy, which a lot of us are, right? I mean, we're humans, right? So
I think that's the
yeah,
problem is it's more of not being able to accept our own messiness because if we have that standard of having it all together, whether it be like, I guess me, like specifically is mostly like with, becoming a young adult and having all the answers. So if everyone in like my circle is carrying that mask, then no one's going to feel safe to have any sort of vulnerability, to say, hey, or even to ask for help. And that's what I seek to do with the podcast and through other means is to break through those barriers so that we can that it by breaking through those barriers it leads to like actual connection instead of just um like kind of just like the mask or something like that.
right. Yeah. Well, so let's go back to your story a little bit. When did you decide to ask for help? Like, was there a moment? Was there something that happened, or yeah, what's the story there?
Wow. It was I don't want to say I was forced, but it was like kind of where I hit like rock bottom in a sense where I was just like I was so deep in depression that it was mostly like I was like I just wanted it. Like it was I don't want to say like desperation per se, but it was just like yeah, like I need this. This is this is kind of not like the only thing, but this is going to help me, and I need to. The months leading up to that, I was kind of doing like my own thinking about therapy and reflecting on how this would benefit me. I started to consider it, and I was just like, you know what, I'm going to do this, and I've committed to it ever since. Ever since then, I did have so I started out, which I reveal on my podcast. I started out with just a temporary therapist for that season, and then I switched to the therapist I have today. So yeah.
It was a temporary one. Like, did you go through your school, or how did
Oh
you?
no, that was just so that was for I think like the teens or youth program. And that was more so like just to help get like out of the depression. Yeah.
Yeah, how does your generation see therapy? Because I think with my generation, it was still very much like either you're an addict or a crazy person, or you're rich. I think we knew like a lot of rich people had therapists for some reason. But is it more normal for you?
What I've witnessed is it's normalized. It's basically like you get therapy. It's not even about like, oh, you're in a crisis situation. It's more of like everyone needs therapy. Um at least in the circles that I'm in, therapy is normalized on campus. It's just like people will wear like shirts like therapy is cool. So it's like it's normalized, and which is a good thing for my generation. But I still feel like um, there might be there's still things um at least with men, I think where there can sometimes be a disconnect, and I that's kind of what I want to do with the podcast is to say, no, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to take those steps. And even before taking those steps, we have to understand, we have to break through those mental barriers that can sometimes hold us back.
Yeah. I find that a lot of men struggle asking for help for sure. And I think struggle in therapy. I think our industry, it's a lot, I talk about a lot on this show, is like how the industry needs to be more tailored towards men, you know, focus more on, challenging, confronting, building respect, kind of bringing some masculine values into therapy. So I think a lot of guys, like, we go in and then we end up feeling like a victim. And we don't want to feel like a victim, right? We want to be a hero. We want to feel like we're getting better and that we're getting stronger, right? I think we still have that kind of masculine core to us where we want to be improving. We want there to be like a more of a coaching type model,
I think that could be beneficial as well. Um, I was talking to someone the other day about that. Is is therapy is therapy aware of uh the barriers of men and like how we are? Because yes, I believe that um men and women, we have emotions, but the way we go about those is definitely different.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that, right? Like, I think we're different. We're equal, of course, but I think we're different. And I think a lot of the therapeutic field can be pretty feminized and it turns away a lot of dudes asking for help, and it can feel very threatening, because it's very foreign. It's foreign to us, even just to sit and have a conversation for an hour about feelings. I think like the average dude doesn't really do that.
Because if you're growing up and you're just never raised to talk about yourself or your feelings, all of a sudden just saying to someone, "Hey, you need therapy." That's not really like, what does that mean? Like they're probably gonna be like, "Well, what does that mean?" It was so yeah.
Yeah, it can feel really weird. I'm curious for you, like, what did Gen Z men struggle with? I mean, maybe some from your own story or from guests you've had on the show or some of your friends. Take a temperature of the generation. Like, what are some of the main things you hear people talk about?
Body image,
Yeah,
body image.
so interesting. That's the first thing you say. That's interesting because I think for most generations that wouldn't be the first thing, but I think it's true. Like, I think a lot of guys struggle with that, but we would never say that. You know.
Body image, comparison,
Yep.
um, what else? Body image comparison, anxiety. I have a lot of friends that have admitted that they have anxiety, and also a big one is loneliness. That's a huge one. Um, that's that's what for me, like, friendship is like one of the biggest, if not the biggest topics on my podcast. If you, I don't know if you looked for it yet, but it's like being one of the biggest on my podcast. And yeah, I think because of like I get I my belief is that men might grow up without either like the tools or just feel like something to be prioritized. So it makes us avoidant and therefore can make us shield ourselves from that. That makes sense. That's my perspective.
I think that's true. I think a lot of guys are really lonely, and I think a lot of guys don't know how to have emotionally intimate relationships because we're not taught to do that. We're not taught to open up. So I think a lot of our friends are like very activity dependent. We can have gym buddies or someone on a team or someone shares a hobby. But the minute we stop doing that, we just lose the friend, because
Yeah.
there isn't much more there,
It's about
Yeah.
it's about the the friendship itself. And in my personal life, my roommate Alex, he also runs the show with me. Definitely changed my view of friendship and what it could be. Like, it expanded my view. And I think having those experiences, um, and also me making the decision to be open to that and to be open to that is helped me as well. So um I think it's so important for men to have those spaces to talk that's another reason why I made the podcast as well. Yeah. Yeah, this is a really good question.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about the male friendship thing. I was actually just working with one of my teenage clients earlier this week, right? And he was talking about how there's like homophobia that can come up, you know, right? Right. But all I have to say is like I think your generation has done an amazing job of like queering everything in a way, right? I think of all the generations, yours is the most open to that, but it was still coming up for him
It's
trying to
ironic
work with a guy,
because
you know?
even if so here's the thing. It's just so it kind of baffles my mind because like in the 1800s, or I don't know if you like done research on this, but like with in different historical time periods, there's evidence of intimate, authentic male friendships. But when you get more towards more so now, it's kind of like we're not necessarily open to it, even though we are more open to different sexualities, but back then they weren't. So it's like it doesn't make sense, but um I think yeah, like it does that mindset of homophobia does impact a lot of friendships or even like the potential of friendship because we either don't want to scare the other guy off or the other guy feels weird about things. That's completely like it's a completely normal um like friendship, but their perception of it affects how we go about it, and that could be it's complicated, it's messy, and it's a fight. It's a fight that I'm willing to be a part of to have that in my life, and I think it's important to not just go with what society says, but to kind of question like where where like what who says you can't say like you love your friend? And I just realized it's Valentine's Day, but it's like who says you can't do that? And it's those social expectations that that can limit it. Um, I'm hoping that like my generation, like Gen Z, is changing the narrative on that. Um, that's my hope. Yes.
If you're enjoying the podcast so far, please hit the subscribe button and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us to reach more men and inspire them to become the best versions of themselves. Thank you for your support. And now back to the show. Yeah, I hope that too. And it does seem like it's moving in that direction, but I agree. I mean, I think our society in general is homophobic. So I see what, yeah, being able to say, I love you, man, right? Or being able to like call a friend when I'm upset, even, like even that for guys, like difficult of like, hey, I want to talk to you.
Or even talk about conflict, because the major thing is like even talk about conflict in their friendship because it's like, well, guys just shouldn't care. I feel like it still exists with Gen Z. It's just that idea that guys shouldn't care, and it's like no, it's just like we need to if we want to fight against this connection, we have to engage in this, and that's what makes us stronger men. I think is to fight for it, and yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Right. And like, yeah, bringing up that because I think that's true, right? Guys, you don't want to be seen as like too sensitive, or like too emotional or that,
Which for
you're,
me,
yeah.
I identify myself as like an HSP, so it it can sometimes like I wouldn't say complicate things, but I think I see it more now as a gift rather than a burden. Because before when I was growing up, when I was like, oh, I'm just like a sensitive one. Now I just see it as like this is a gift that I can use for people and just in general.
Yeah. Let you tune into people probably in a way that others can't. You're probably aware of more subtle things in a relationship. Yeah. Can you describe your relationship with your, I don't know, with a roommate maybe or with another friend, just to give our listeners about what a male friendship can be? Like what
Okay, so
potential is there?
I have two important relationships. Let's start with my friendship, Dimitri. I've mentioned him on the podcast. He's also been on the podcast. It's like a brother. We're completely separate backgrounds. Like he's white and they're into different hobbies than me. We don't have the same hobbies, but it's like a sense of like we get each other and we have uh more so like for us, our faith also brings us together as well. And we're able to just talk about deep things like purpose and from depression. We talk about deep things and it I know it's helped him, it's helped me to redefine our idea of what real brotherhood can look like. Because, brotherhood, I feel like sometimes we see brotherhood as just we don't see it as like the deep authenticity where we're able to be fully seen and someone is able to fully see us. And that's what I experienced with Dimitri. Uh, with my roommate Alex, uh, it's funny because how we met. We were not originally roommates. He was one that asked me to be his roommate, and I was surprised because I'm more reserved and he's more like extroverted and everything. But and we met in marching band and we just started, we got really close, and I feel like it's just like another brother that I have to walk alongside with me through life and just to just go through the ups and downs of life. He's seen me cry. We've been through like everything, literally everything together. And that's like it's so good to have. And I feel like maybe like you don't for me, I don't realize that it's so rare. And that's why like I want to give that to other men so that they know that like this is what we all need. But it seems so rare because maybe like society doesn't allow us that, but we have the power to change the narrative and to engage more in that.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, it's beautiful that you have that. And yeah, culture is made up of people. So it starts as to start with the individual. If you can start to shift the norms and make it okay that you can just like have friends, like it's like most people you feel like would want that, but there is a lot of fear, and there's a lot of fear out there, especially for men around
Yeah,
people
and
connecting.
they helped me start the podcast, and they still help me with podcasts to this day.
Yeah. I think that's cool to have other guys that like invest in you, especially if they don't do the same things, to have like kind of a council of dudes that come from different backgrounds, different diversity, different socioeconomic. I think it's really cool to be able to consult like a council of brothers, like a circle of men to go through life,
That's
give
it's
you
it's
real advice,
really
you know?
it's really when you experience it, it's like you wonder like, okay, why did I hear those messages growing up that said that this was gay? Because mostly like in middle school and high school, that's kind of what it was like. Um, it's like why did I hear this? It's like just you miss out on so much when you have that mindset, and I understand why men have that can have that mindset, whether it be just that's just how they grew up, or maybe they didn't have that type of relationship with their dad, so that affects how they show up in friendship, or they tried, like whether in middle school and high school, but they got rejected, so that kind of makes them want to like close up. And I understand it. So
Yeah, and there can be a lot of trauma there, but I agree. I think guys should have that. And if you look back in history, there's always been, men's circles. There's always been even things like hunting parties or, platoons or squads, if you want to go hyper masculine. Like dudes have been in groups forever. I think we really work well in teams. So having an emotional team makes a ton of sense.
yeah,
Like,
and even like just how I'm just really reading the letters. Like I like because I'm a history nerd, so like I'll like read stuff from history. So I was reading like how like Abraham Lincoln was talking about his friend, and it was like the language that they use. It's like, well, like how we look at it today, we will see it as romance, but back then they saw it as like this is an authentic friendship.
Yeah, there was so much during that time where they're talking about like their gentleman friends, and they're like air friends and all this kind of stuff where they had pen pals, right? Like across the world, they would write back and forth, like really intimate stuff, which is it's cool. I think it's really cool. And then we don't have that today, really. It's not normalized. What kind of history do you like? Is there a certain time period or a certain culture that you
I mostly like world history from like up until 1500 AD. That's like my solid history. So I think it's interesting, especially the Middle Ages and ancient times is really interesting.
Yeah, ancient history is wild. I mean, masculinity was all over the place then too, right? If you look at like and sexuality too, right? Roman culture, Egyptian culture, right, was like seemingly way more accepting of different genders and all kinds of different things than we are today.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think our relationship with our how good enough we feel as men, that definitely ties into mental health because for me, growing up, if I were to share a little bit about myself, growing up, like the experiences that I had, I was bullied a lot in middle school, so that kind of affected how I viewed how good enough I was as a man, and I internalized that. And so, like once you internalize that, it can like create a lot of anxiety and depression, and uh, that's how your relationship with your identity can kind of affect your mental health. I see it as like intertwined, and I think sometimes we don't see it that way, but I definitely see it that way when you carry so much toxic shame or around like how you feel you're not like good enough as a guy. That affects your mental health and like along points in my own journey, I had to redefine what I felt like what being a guy or being a man is in the world because someone like my dad can have a version of something of what being a guy is, but it doesn't align to my authentic self. I don't know if that hopefully that made sense. I kind of went off on in a tangent.
No, it totally makes sense. And I want to just dig deeper into it. Do you have a definition of modern masculinity? Like, what would you say, the current version of being a guy is?
As my definition is just being your authentic self. But even when you say that, it's like, well, like, what is that? Because some people, like me, for a while, I was kind of disconnected from myself in a way because I didn't want to, like, even as a highly sensitive person, I was disconnected from like my emotional experiences, which kind of disconnected me from my authentic self because I didn't feel safe to be my authentic self. And I think when men start to show up as their authentic selves and they accept who they are, I feel like that is what being a man is. It it's not really necessarily about like the standards of like the tough guy or um having like a certain body image that's not really you, which I feel like a lot of people struggle with, especially with my generation. But yeah, it's all about being your authentic self and discovering your authentic self for a lot of us.
Yeah. Can you say more about that discovery process? Because I think you're right. When you tell guys like, just be yourself, a lot of guys are like, I don't know who that is.
Yeah, I
Yep.
feel like if you're disconnected from yourself like I was for a while, then you're not really going to know what that is. Or if you're afraid of your authentic self, that's not going to it's going to like that's when the masks come up as like I see masks as kind of coping mechanisms for like anxiety or fear of being yourself. So like for example, for me, I would say like one of my masks is like maybe like a detached um personality in a way. Uh Not fully, but to some degree. Like I had that because I didn't want to I thought that being a sensitive guy was inherently wrong. So I had like a mask of like being detached or kind of like a stoic mask. And once I changed my mindset about um, being a guy and expanded it, I was able to embrace that part of myself and develop more authentic connections where I meet people that are like, oh no, there's nothing wrong with your sensitivity. So like it's like when you change your narrative and you meet people like that are like kind of mirrors to your true self, then you don't have to wear that mask. And I think that's why guys can be disconnected from themselves and not their um true to who they are. And that does create a lot of like anxiety and depression, because if you don't know who you are, then you're not gonna like have a core sense of purpose, and then you're gonna like just do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, if you don't know who you are, you don't have a compass, right? Like you don't know how to be. You don't know what matters to you.
Yeah. But I feel like maybe men might not go that far because we're maybe taught that what's on the surface is what matters. We focus so much on image that we aren't connected to ourselves, because we start from the image, and then we're just like, as long as I look good, as long as I perform, the performance is a huge thing. Performance and perfectionism is a huge thing, especially for me, because if you feel like the way that you get validation is through your performance, um, whether it be like how you work, or how you do in school or whatever, if your performance is based on that, then that's kind of there's no room for knowing who you are, because you're focused so much on performance.
Yeah, and it's all focused on other people's opinions about you, right? It's all focused on what grade you get or how much money you make, or
Yeah, like money. Oh, money. We're doing money next week. Yeah.
it's a key one. So I want to bring it back to the body image thing because you've mentioned it a handful of times. Can you expand upon that a little bit? Like, how does that show up in your generation? What is the, ideal body image? Is it like the Avenger, right? Or is it like Arnold Schwarzenegger, or like what are guys moving towards? Like, and
So
best for
what
dudes.
I'm noticing is, um, I think like what you mentioned, like that Avenger, that look of like um, I think it's like like that look at the like six pack, or just having being like so, yes, being so like muscular, strong. I think if men don't have that, then they feel less than about themselves. Eh, I feel like we do something wrong when we make that the standard for everyone. And when that is the standard, people that don't have that, or they're trying to modify themselves to be something that they're not. That could be the same thing can go with like the masculine, like the different mask. It's like there's a standard of being like emotionally detached, but when that's not you and that's not your experience, then you feel that there's something wrong with you. So it's like a shame thing when like people are like scrolling. When you scroll and see all these bodies, you feel shame about yourself because you feel that this is like, I have to be that way.
Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you wanted to open up, but you were afraid that it wouldn't be taken well? You ask yourself, what's the point? Nothing's going to change anyway. So you do what you always do. You push it down, numb out the pain with a drink, a night out, or pornography. I've been there myself, and I know that men lack the outlets for emotional expression, which is why I founded Men's Therapy Online, a healing hub for men's mental health. If you've been knocked on your ass or just crave meaningful connection, join Men's Therapy Online, a community of men who just get it. We offer individual therapy, men's groups, and powerful retreats, all led by licensed therapists. At Men's Therapy Online, we will help you to get back on your feet and take your life to the next level. Start your journey today at menstherapy.online. Yeah. Yeah. Tell me about the social media thing. I think, fortunate that I didn't have a smartphone until I graduated from college. You all grew up with it, right? Like it was plugged into your brain.
What's interesting, you're asking the wrong person, because I'm not on social media.
Oh, good. Good. You're doing the right thing.
I'm not on social media. I haven't been on social media since COVID, so I'm not on social media. But from like my friends' perspective, they say that like they feel kind of discouraged within themselves because they see something that isn't them, but they feel they have to be. And it's like kind of they're sometimes sold. It's like right there, like you're seeing it, and if that's like images in your brain, then you're going to feel that this is what I need to be, when really it's not. When I was on, that's funny that you mentioned it. When I was on TikTok like years ago, when I was in high school, um, I was not happy at all. I would be on TikTok for hours, and I would just like feel so lonely that I didn't have like this group of friends that I see on TikTok or hanging out with each other, or my life doesn't look like this. So that's but since 2020, I haven't had TikTok. Yeah.
You're doing the right thing. Yeah. You're going to be, I think, like separate from the generation, but in a good way. Yeah.
A lot of my friends call me an old soul, but
Yeah.
I embrace it. Yeah.
'Cause I see that a lot with my young clients. Like you said, it's like, especially like the fitness influencers, right? You see these like jack dudes doing crazy shit, or there's always influencers that just like give away tons of money or do all these like kind of like pranks or gags or whatever, where there's like throwing away cars and shit. And it's like, oh my God, how can you compare yourself to that? Like that's like a big person, you know?
Yeah, it's just that this is not, if it's not you, then why do you feel that you need to be that way? And there's so many things that, like, I'm into gardening, I'm into collecting vinyls and stuff, but and I'm also into like I like fashion. So it can be, some of those hobbies can be seen as like, oh, that's for girls. So so it's just like, over time I was like, you know what? It's not. It's just we've made it that way.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. I mean, one of my masculine values is mastery, right? Like getting good at shit. And what I tell my dudes is like, I don't care what you get good at, but like be good at it, right? Like be a master fashion shopper, right? Like really know shit about vinyl, like just like master your domains. So I think that is masculine, is like just the pursuit of greatness in some way, shape, or form. But the actual flavor is very, very secondary to what you have to learn, right? The act of learning and discipline and self-improvement and iteration, like those things, those kind of deeper levels, I think is what makes you a stronger man. Doesn't matter like what you're doing it in, you know?
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, my biggest question I wanted to ask you was, what have you noticed? Because me as a, like, well, you're a therapist, right? Because you definitely inspire me, because I want to, this is what I want to go into. But my biggest thing is, what have you noticed with men? Like, what are some common themes that you've noticed with the clients that you've worked with?
Yeah. So it's very interesting because with a lot of my guys, they come to me during a low point in their life. So for a lot of it's divorce or substance abuse. Those are kind of the two big ones. You know, they have some horrible incident, they drink too much and they blow up Christmas, right? Or they had a divorce. And a lot of them are like surprised and pissed, you know? So I think for a lot of guys, it takes like a really hard knock at the door to have their eyes open to needing to look at their emotions and their mental health. You know, they're not even using the, yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, there's so many guys, I'll tell you that like, you know, after working with them for 6 months, they're like, oh, I guess I was pretty depressed, you know, or I guess I had anxiety. Like they weren't even aware of it. Where I'm like, your generation is like, you know what it is, right? You can say like, oh, I'm an anxious person, or oh, I struggle with depression. The language is out there. But for a lot of my dudes, it's like they have to, almost in retrospect, do they realize that their mental health was in the toilet, right? It's not until their like life blows up that they even start to consider it in a way, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. I guess like a I guess like another thing I might want to ask is, like, what have you noticed about, like, have you worked with like young adults from Gen Z? What have you noticed about us, and like how we like some common problems?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's some positives and negatives. I think like a lot of the positives we've talked about, I think your mental, you know, your EQ was way higher than mine was at your age, like 10 times, like a whole fucking other level of EQ. the fact that you guys, are just even aware of emotions and vibes and what you're doing with, gender and sexuality is like so far beyond what, my generation did. And I think that creates a lot of space in people. Um, I think the negative that I see with people is like, I think your standards and expectations are really, really high. So I think it leads to like a lot of disappointment. Yeah, a lot of disappointment and loneliness. Like, I think y'all get frustrated very quickly when things don't go like exactly how you want it to, or exactly how you thought it will go. So perfectionism, yeah, there's like a ton of perfectionism, which I think on the one hand is good because I think you have like really high goals and aspirations and dreams, and like I want to nurture that as a therapist, and I see it also as something that creates some fragility because when it doesn't go that way, I can see it's like easy to like throw in the towel or give up instead of being like, okay, you did it 70% of the way, like let's just keep
Yeah.
going, right?
And
Like
I
keep
think a
going.
huge thing maybe for my generation is living in the moment, because I feel like we're so like uh fast paced with everything that we feel like we need to always move on to the next moment to like achieve that thing, but we don't like appreciate the journey.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely true. I think it's like very future focused and can be like outcome focused. I think I think most men are outcome focused. It takes us a while to like slow down and like really feel where we're at. You know?
Yeah, and
Mhm.
accept that too.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think young man's hard because it's like you're just aware. You become aware that you're the bottom of the totem pole. Because I think there is a hierarchy. I mean, it sucks, but I think it's there. And I think, like, I remember when I was your age in college, I became painfully aware of, like, oh shit, like, I don't have any money. I'm like not really in good shape. I'm not dating anybody. I don't have a job. Like you just become aware that you have to, there's so much to go. There's so much to go. And you look around at older dudes that like have done that work to some extent. And it's like, oh shit, am I supposed to be this guy? Am I supposed to like already have a career and a wife and
Or
a family and a
like who am I
car?
supposed to be?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is always like that question. And I feel like we find that through discovering our true self so that that can like rid some of those standards. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one thing I love about your generation that I feel like my generation didn't have is I find that by and large, and men included, are way more artistic and creative. Like I find that your generation like really values art and creation, whether it's like fashion or drawing or music or something. Um, I see a lot of that in your generation, way more than in mine. I think mine was still more like sports in a way. Whereas I see it's like become a much more like creative, cultural type of thing with your generation. I'm curious if you see that parallel.
I see that. I see that a lot with content creation and those platforms. A huge thing with my generation is YouTube animation as well. So different, like there's different mediums of creativity, whether and I feel like the benefit of social media is being able to express yourself and develop a community out of that. Whereas maybe like years ago, you probably weren't like as open to express your creativity in a way that would you can find other people to discuss to be creative with.
Yeah, totally. Right. I mean, I find that some of my Gen Z clients, like, they just have this awesome talent on the side. It's like, oh, yeah, I'm also a musician, right? Or like, oh, I also like sketch, or I also like do, embroidery or whatever, right? Like, there seems to be this like real art appreciation that I think is cool. I mean, like, I love art, and I feel like a lot of my generation didn't quite have that in a way, right? It was much more like monoculture. Whereas I think your generation, there's so many subcultures that people can plug into now.
I think that's my generation a lot. And um and a big thing for me that I value and so much, and I've done like a lot of reading on this, is about shame and vulnerability and the work of Brene Brown. I really like I read a lot about like I read I think all of her books and just watch her speeches and stuff. And that's like something that I didn't think of. I think I might have to go soon, but that's something that, yeah, I have to go soon. But before we sign off, that's a huge thing for me, and that's what I've used to make men's couch and to make the spaces where guys can come together. Is first recognizing shame and why men struggle with shame so much. Because I feel like the root of a lot of problems, like maybe like body image or having like different masks, is like the root is shame. But if we learn that vulnerability takes courage and it takes a risk to be vulnerable, then we'll feel empowered to engage in those spaces, to practice vulnerability and to establish safe connection.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think the current frontier is the mind and the emotional space. So I think it is courage. I think that's where men are finding their courage and their bravery, is taking these risks. Yeah, so I do hear you got to wrap up.
Oh yeah, because I'm in the library, the school library.
Yeah, as you're in the field, like, where can people find more about you or listen to the show online?
Huh?
Where can people find out more about you or listen to your podcast?
So it's the Instagram, Men's Couch Instagram, and Spotify. That's like where we are right now, because we just started. We started October of 2023. So yeah.
That's awesome. Well, we're going to put all that stuff in the show notes. You can go check out the Men's Couch. You can check out Micah Blackwell and his work out there. It's really great to speak with you. It's awesome to have this.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed it. If you're listening, yeah, give us all the social stuff, like, share, subscribe, do all that. Share it with somebody, maybe Gen Z, who's looking to, open up a little bit more, be more vulnerable, be authentic. Direct them over to Micah's show, The Men's Couch. And we'll see you next week on another episode of the Men's Therapy Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. Don't forget to visit menstherapy.online to learn more about the work that we are doing to support and inspire men. Until next time, keep moving forward.